All right, so let's have a honest talk, you and I, as to why I joined the military and what led up to that decision. And so, when I graduated high school, back at 2012, I was 19 years young, and afterwards, I started my own business, and I sold, I bought apparel from stores, sold it online, or, I would have vitamins and supplements for other companies that I would sell to people. And I did that a lot. I did a bunch of different things. I was also on YouTube doing origami and a bunch of different things to make a lot of money, have a lot of income. And, at that time, I hung out with people earning 5, 6, and 7 figures a year. And they shaped my life very early on, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way. Now that I'm looking back at that time, I thought it was all the best things, right? But one of the biggest mistakes that I made very early on is one of the things that they taught me was, hey, watch out, the top 10 people you hang out with, they determine your income, your financial life, your profession, your hobbies, and all this type of stuff, which is, in my opinion, true. Your top 10 people are very important. But the mistake that I made was I started to cut out people that I didn't value as worth talking to. I was very arrogant. I was very, I thought I was a know-it-all. I thought, I was very money-driven. And, that was the mistake that I made very early on. I started to cut out people. Everyone in my high school, I started to cut out people from sometimes my family. I stayed away from them, even though they would tell me, hey, you need to slow down. Hey, you're doing this wrong. I ignored that advice. I ignored what they said, and I thought I could do it all. I thought I was a know-it-all. And, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was looking back, I was headed towards a downward spiral. And so, early 2013, I was doing well, but, after a year, at 2014, it started to come all crashing down. I would get in an argument with my employees, and I would get arguments with my associates and stuff like that. So, it started to spiral down, and I remember the point where it changed for me was around November. I think it was like November 24th, 2014. I was in my school's library sitting down doing my English paper. So I was a full-time student, full-time employee, working in a different store. At the same time, I had my business that I was running full-time, and also, doing YouTube and stuff like that. And I was very stressed out, right? Because my business wasn't where I wanted to be, my education wasn't where I wanted to be, my finances wasn't where I wanted to be. So, I remember doing my school English paper, and I said to myself, you know what? This isn't so fun anymore. I need to change something. I can't be doing this anymore. And I remember Jim Rohn saying, hey, for things to change, you need to change. So I knew for my life to change, I needed to change. So I started to, at that point, a quote popped up into my mind, and it said, when nothing goes right, go left. So I started to look into something as a real estate major, when time is money, as a business major. When time is money, what's something that I never thought about doing before, right? In business, time is money. The more you're productive, the more you're valuable to the marketplace, the more money you earn. But in the military, I started to look into it. You just get an X amount of income, X amount of dollars, right? So I looked into the military life, and that's something I never thought about doing. Back then, I didn't really appreciate military people. I didn't really appreciate military personnel. I thought they try to take advantage of things. I thought the government spent too much money on the military. And so, now that I'm in, a year and a half later, I do truly appreciate everything the military does and everything the military personnel do. And the reason why I'm sharing with you this is the fact that, we all join the military at a certain age for certain reasons, sometimes straight out of high school, or sometimes like me, at your 20s, sometimes mid-20s or your late 30s. And what I want to share with you is the fact that, I'm starting to really truly understand what Jim Rohn was trying to say. And one of the things he said, hey, don't let your last 5 years be your next 5 years, right? So don't let your previous life, so don't let the things that made you unhappy when you were a civilian and you said to yourself, man, I need to change, let me join the military. And just because you have the title of being in the military, being a soldier, being a sailor, being an airman, doesn't mean your life is going to magically change and be happy, right? Because for things to change, you have to change, right? That's what Jim Rohn said. And what Jim Rohn also wants to say is from that, don't let your last 5 years be your next 5, right? So what I'm starting to do is I'm looking back at my last 5 years. How did I spend my time? I was hanging out with the wrong people, but at the time, I thought these were the people that I definitely need to be with. And I was in the wrong environment, and I wasn't doing the correct things. I wasn't listening to my family. I wasn't very close to my family. I wasn't very religious, So looking back at my last 5 years, looking at the feedback analysis, looking at my history book, my journal, I can see where I went wrong. Right? So what I'm doing right now to change my next 5 years is making sure I develop new habits, right? Because you can't have the same habits that made you unhappy and then carry it on to the military life and you expect for things to be better, right? Because as Albert Einstein defines insanity as doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? For example, let's say you play basketball and you shoot with left hand and you make 1 out of every 10 shots and when you're a civilian. And you do that again when you're in the military and you expect for things to be different. You expect, hey, just because I'm in the military, I should make 5 out of 10 shots at least, right? And you try it, but the results are the same. You get 1 out of 10. No, for things to change, you have to change. You have to look back at, what did I do wrong? What led up to that decision? What made me unhappy? And start to change your habits, start to change your outlook, start to change the amount of the different type of information coming into your brain, right? So you can get different results, right? The more negativity that goes in here, the more bad information that goes here, the more negativity that you express. Because what we say, what we do is all from within here. Okay, in my opinion. So, for things to change, you have to change. Don't let your last 5 years be your next 5 years. All right? So that's what I wanted to share with you. An honest talk today. I know it was a little bit long, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right?